Welcome to the Century 21 Leading Edge podcast, where our mission is to give back and provide value to the industry that has been so amazing to all of us. We do this by keeping realtors and the public up to date on what's going on in our industry, growing our collective knowledge as professionals, and most importantly, by giving realtors and brokers everywhere the tools necessary to bring their business to an unprecedented level.
I like to shoot things over and over again.
Hi.
Hello.
Hey guys, welcome to Century 21 Leading Edge 16th podcast. We are in self-isolation with this new world that we're living in. So we are trying to be responsible brokers, and we are each at home or at least on our own doing this in a new format. So hopefully you get all the information just as before. You guys want to go ahead and introduce yourselves?
Sure. I'm Tasis Giannakakis, and I'm live from my house on our podcast. Welcome, guys, for our first virtual podcast.
And good day. It's Anthony Bungaro here, and looking forward to catching up and sharing some news with everyone during this different podcast.
Yeah.
Very good. So I guess we should start the podcast by just talking about, I guess, the new normal. So, Anthony, what are you finding with this pandemic, and what is your forecast or outcome? What are you seeing with this whole pandemic scenario?
Well, I certainly, on one note, find that there are a lot of people who are being responsible, not just from a company standpoint, as recommended by yourself, Paul, but certainly, the government and knowing how serious this pandemic is. I'm glad to see that, the agents are understanding the seriousness of it and the social distancing. Because of that, business has changed. Because of that, I'm only going to say what everybody knows. Things have dropped down. But again, my eyes always look at, okay, what's happening? And, you're seeing the ladies loading up 4 or 5 listings the other day at the front desk. You see, as few appointments as there are, we're looking at various appointments. In terms of the thought process, we're looking at the sales. Since sales are down, we know that's your department, Paul, showing what happened in January, first couple weeks of March, but it certainly fundamentally dropped down, 75% or whatever it dropped down. But the good part of it is that there are sales coming in, and as a company, there are people that have to buy. Maybe they sold before, or their home sold and they need to buy. So my thoughts are that come June, July, whatever, in that time period, I can't see it waiting later than the fall, but I think you'll see whatever sales we are doing now, which is apparently the worst time, waiting for the curve to drop, waiting for it to settle down. If this is supposedly the worst time, and we're doing sales as far down as they are, I think we'll double our sales once it starts to normalize. Business, the agents will definitely operate differently. I'm sure we'll all agree with that. The keeping apart and using the technology, as Treb has introduced the virtual open housing center. So business will be changed different, as far as I know, forever. But I really think it will turn around. If I might throw in one thing, and then I won't talk anymore. There was an article, just to throw it out there.
Anthony,
if I can.
This is a podcast. You can keep talking.
You can do that?
Okay, yeah, you keep talking. It's okay, right?
I thought the clock was going to say, okay, that's enough.
No.
There was an article in the South China Morning Post, I guess similar to the New York Times or a big newspaper. And I've just got the heading here. It said, this was just about 4 or 5 days ago. China's housing market springs back to life as sales in 30 major cities triple with the coronavirus crisis abating. And then the article goes on to say that real estate offices reopen across the country following a nationwide shutdown. Now, I'm not suggesting that it's there. It's going to the same thing's going to replicate here. But now that they've opened it up, they're saying that sales are going crazy. So I'm hoping that some of these things replicate here in our country.
Very good. How about you, Tass? How are you seeing things?
Yeah, I think that I agree with Anthony. I think that when this first started coming out in the media and the initial restrictions, I do think that we had a bit of a rush and I guess maybe slowness from the realtors to I guess isolate. But I think that was because there was a lot more people in play at that time. So all of those people that had, let's say, sold in the first 2 weeks of March, all of a sudden, in the latter half of March, when the restrictions came in, they were like, oh my God, I got to buy a house quick because I've already sold my house. So I do think that it was pretty active at that time and seems to have continuously gotten less active because I think a lot of that has gotten fulfilled. And then the general public, if you're not overly motivated to trade in real estate right now, you are likely going to wait, like you said, Anthony, right? I think that the market will come back. I think it'll come back strong because we had such a large demand before this happened that it was starting to look like 2017 in terms of multiple offers. The first 2 weeks of March were just crazy busy, right? And so I do think we went into this dilemma with a big demand. Now, part of that obviously is going to be eroded because of confidence, consumer confidence. But I still believe at the end of the day, the vast majority of people, they sell or buy based on their life, right? And that's what I've always believed. So if I'm a newly married guy in a 1-bedroom condo and we go see the doctor and the doctor tells us we're having triplets, I'm moving, right? I'm moving. There's, and that's part of reality, right? There's divorces, there's everything, right? So I think the vast majority of people's decisions are not usually based on so much the market as they are on their life, right? And life will continue. That's what we all know, is that this too will pass. And life will continue, and part of that will be people, buying and selling real estate, right? And in the meantime, is it a challenge? Sure, it is, right? There's people that have a need to trade, and some of them are very casual about it. Other ones I've heard, are nervous. Agents whose clients are in the need to buy because they've sold, and the agent was being cautious, saying, "Hey, I don't know how comfortable I am showing properties." But I think that the industry and agents have been quick to respond with solutions, right? Like, this is what you're going to do. This is a safe way to show a house, or this is a virtual way to show a house, or all kinds of solutions with stuff like that, right? So I think we're working through it, and how long it's going to take? Yeah, I think best guess, I'm thinking sometime in June is when we start to get to a more relaxed atmosphere. We'll stop trade between now and then. Yeah, I think so. I think for the motivated ones, but I think we're probably looking at June before things start to get a little bit more normal.
Right. Okay. So I'm going to give you a little bit of a different twist on that. I think that we have a marketplace, and when we look at starting to analyze what's going to happen, and we go back to look at history, and we look at what happened in 2008 when the market crashed in the U.S., they went through a long, drawn-out process of recovery. We went through a situation where we had about a 5-month slowdown where things went to about half of what they normally are in terms of number of transactions, prices dropped off. And then after that 5 month of people being uncertain, they all jumped back into the market. And at the end of 2009, I think there was 84,000 transactions sold on the Toronto Real Estate Board. So that came back really fast. And then when we look at the difference between that recovery and the recovery from the 1990 market, when we really had a challenge with the affordability of property. So back then, for the younger viewers that are watching the podcast that weren't around, when 1989 happened, and I started real estate in 1984, so I went through this market. And between 1984 and 1990, or the latter part of 89, the market went up so fast. We had interest rates at 12%, so the affordability was out of whack. And it was, I think the affordability index said that the average family needed 54% of their income in order to qualify to buy a house. And that just is unsustainable. And as a result, we then had a significant reduction in values, a significant reduction in number of transactions. And why I'm comparing these two is that I think that the changes that have happened here are more like, not exactly like, but more like 1990. And here's why, is that in 2008, people were making the decisions off of their feelings, like you were talking about, Tass, right?
Yep.
Is their confidence in the market, right? Now, the difference today, or with this current situation, is that if we have 20% of the people out of work, it is not just about their feelings, it's about people having to get back to work, to get caught up with the losses that they established with this, right? So I see it as a little bit of a longer process. Now, what I also see is that the reality is that the agents and the brokerages, like Century 21 Leading Edge, that are making the adjustments to deal with the industry the way it is now. And, I read a quote in the REM magazine that talked about, this being an unprecedented place in our history and in our business. And then once things get back to normal, then people can get their business started again. And my belief is that our agents should not do that. Our agents should pivot, make the adjustments for how the business is now. Because even in 1990, half of the business was done. So if half the agents are not doing business, then the other half still has that business that's available. They just need to make adjustments in their business, right? And the other thing that I see with this is that I agree with you guys with the timeline of June before this massive isolation and that we've got this pandemic under control. But what you're going to see then is you're going to see that a certain percentage, so the early adopters that get the first iPhone, those guys are going to come back out and start looking at homes and transacting in real estate the same way. But I think that that's going to be 10% of the population. And then 90% of the population is still going to be wanting to do business with that new normal, with that virtual scenario, with that not face-to-face meeting. So the agents that embrace that, and what we're really doing as a company is we're trying to set up our company where we're helping our agents to embrace this new technology, to embrace this new way of doing business, so that we're not going to stop and start our business. We're going to continue our business. So we're going to pivot how we do it, and we're going to continue it. And then I see that the consumer is going to slowly start to come back out. And I think that it's going to take until 2021 before the majority, so that's over 50%, are then looking at the real estate market in the same way. So I think that it's going to take a lot longer for the people that wait for it to be back to normal, the old normal. But if we make those adjustments, we can still transact. I want to actually give you guys some numbers, and this is Century 21 leading edge numbers. So when we look at a normal March, we are doing 25 transactions a day, right? That's what we do. We do about 500 for the month of March. That's our normal transactions. And I'm going to read you the last 10 days. So and these are actual numbers. So it is 19, 13, 12, 13, 15, 13, 15, 26, 9, 14, 12. So when you look at that, I guess we had one at 26, was March 26th, right? So that was a normal day. So when you look at that, it is half to slightly over half. And those are, and that goes from April 7th. So this is current numbers, right? So what that shows me is that if you make those adjustments, there are people transacting. And if there's fewer agents in the marketplace because they haven't adapted, then we can be the ones that are doing the business. So I think that that's critically important, that we convey to our agents and we be the place that you can transact in this market. And I also want to stress that any of this transactions that we're doing, we are fundamentally looking at a safe environment. We have our front desk staff isolated, not interacting with the public. We have special questionnaires that are going out to the buyer agent and for the buyer's agent's clients, where we're asking them health questions before we're having them come to our listings. So we are doing all of the things that we need to do to keep people safe. And that is the priority. So I don't want people to misconstrue that, oh, we're just doing business anyway. We're doing business in a safe environment. And the majority of the things that we're doing is in a virtual scenario. We are meeting with buyers. We are doing virtual presentations. We're signing them up by e-signature. We're then sending them virtual tours of properties. We're narrowing things down. And maybe at the end of the day, we're doing one actual in-person appointment where they're inspecting the home before they waive their conditions. So we are really moving that business to a different way of going about it. Let me ask you guys, though, what is the mood of the agents out there? How are they, interacting with management? What are they saying? What do you hear from the agents, Tass?
Yeah, that's interesting. I think there's an interesting split there, because I think some realtors are taking, the position of hibernation, right? Which is not the right thing to do. And I think others are embracing the technology, embracing everything that we have going on online, and accepting the fact that I agree with you, Paul. I think that what I was stating earlier was, what do I think the public is going to do? But I've always believed that the realtor, like you, when I started in this business, our manager would say, "This is how many deals got done on Trev this month, and all you need to do is get 2 per agent, or 3 or 4 or whatever." And the number was always huge, right? So it's not like, oh, there was only 5 deals on Trev that month and I didn't get 2. There was always thousands, right? So I do think that although that number on Trev will drop, like you said, as a realtor, there's no reason why you can't get your fair share or even a bigger chunk than what you used to get, if you're embracing the situation and working within it instead of waiting for it to pass, right? Waiting for it to pass is not the answer, 100%, right? I think that even if you're not transacting, you should be preparing to transact. You should be sharpening your tools. You should be talking with your clients. And I'm not even suggesting calling your clients to say, "Hey, you want to buy a house today?" Checking on your clients, right? Just the normal stuff that every realtor should be doing, right? Genuinely having conversations with everybody, because they are going to lead to, okay, what's going on in the market, right? That's a common, everybody in the public wants to know, how has COVID affected the real estate market, right? So yeah, I do think that there's some realtors that have accepted that this is a new reality and you need to go with the flow. And that, I think, is the correct thing to do. And I think that others that are waiting for this to pass, that's not the right thing to do. I think that they need to get on board with the same thing that we've done. I have been working from home for 3 weeks, and it's amazing how busy I am. So it's not like, oh, you're at home, you're bored. I'm busier now at home than I was when I was going to the office, right? So there's no reason why realtors can't take that same approach, right? So lots to do, lots to learn, and lots to adjust to. So let's see if who takes the baton and who doesn't, right?
That's right. It's interesting that when we look at working from home, the day doesn't end.
No.
Right.
No.
And it's funny. I have staff that is working Monday to Friday. I'm sending out an email at 8:30 a.m. on Sunday morning. I got a response at 9:50.
Yeah.
Right. So it is really that we are in a tough situation. So it's all hands on deck. The people that we have working this are paying attention and keeping a close eye on what's going on. So I think that is critical as well. How are you finding feedback from the agents, Anthony? What are you hearing from your guys?
Yeah, well, definitely the whole thing is affected. So the feedback is it's affected everyone. Our agents are human beings just like the public. So the example is you'll get situations just like on a deal that has gone through and we're calling to book a revisit, and you'll get people that say, "I don't want anybody here. I can't have anyone in our home," because there's the nervousness over the fact that there could be 8 carriers, or you may not be sick, or they've got children. So the reality is it's very bad times. But if you look at the agents, Tassis mentioned that very clearly, there's almost no middle ground. There are some that are just going, "Oh my Lord, I got to just sit back and I can't wait till this is over." Right? And then I don't see the middle ground. I see agents that are doing a lot of transactions and they're busy and they're just like no tomorrow bringing in listings. But it's not saying that they're disrespectful. They are very clear that they have to operate differently. We are very clear that you can't breathe down people's back. So the way of doing business is different. So there is those type of situations, like I said, even when you're booking a revisit or a mortgage inspector, no problem. It's just go on. It works. But there are some people that go, are you crazy? I'm not having anyone come to my house. But, your house is sold and, we need this for the mortgage. So there are difficult times out there. But I think the good news for me is when you look at it, overall, there seemed to be, and you mentioned this earlier, Tassis, there was a lot of disrespect in the beginning. It was something new, right?
Yeah.
They're wanting to party. They're wanting to hang out at the office. Even on the news, you hear them, oh, the weather's nice. They're congregating, doing barbecues. Unfortunately, there are people like that. And when I say unfortunately, we got to get rid of this. We got to stop the curve. The sooner it slows down, you get numbers like it's tailing off, the sooner it's good for business. Because life doesn't just revolve around me. There's all kinds of small businesses, restaurants, etc., that you cry when you drive by and see them shut down. See, the thing with real estate is everybody, this is what I learned from day one, everybody needs a roof over their head. And like we discussed, it could be too big, it could be too small, they can't afford it. And this is unfortunately what's going to happen over the next 3 to 6 months. There's going to be people say, oh my goodness, we got to get this house on the market. Why don't we cash out? We can pay off all our debt, catch up. So there's going to be a need and more needs and more listings and more needs to sell. So as I said, Paul, your question was the agents. There's the two kinds. We're fielding a lot of questions as best as we can. But on a positive note, I see it. Yes, I know where you're saying it could be longer than it could necessarily be. It's not a slam dam thank you, ma'am. But my thoughts are, if you're doing 150 sales in a month or 300 sales in a month, they will go up. They are going to go up. Not up to where it should be, but it will go up. And that's important as a company, but it's important that we're here providing the service to people that need a roof over their head.
Yeah. And I want to clarify, Anthony, what I was saying. So yeah. I'm saying that the number of transactions is going to increase. All I'm saying is that there is quite a significant number of those people that are going to want to transact in a safe virtual environment, right, similar to what we're doing right now.
Understood.
For a longer period of time. Yes. And the agents that embrace that and don't look at it as, because some people are saying, oh, it's a month, I won't learn that stuff, I won't do that stuff, I won't make those adjustments in my business,
right,
until it's back. And all I'm saying is that those people are going to be out of luck. So I think that it's going to come back. We have so much pent-up demand for transactions in the Toronto real estate market.
Correct.
Right? And when you look at the board originally had a forecast of 90,000 transactions for the year. So they revised that to 70. So that's still a huge number of transactions.
Correct.
If you look at all those people that are going to drop out. So the transactions are going to be there, but the agents that are going to do them are going to be the ones that embrace the changes and pivot their business. And that's why I'm trying to convince our agents to be the ones to do that. And the truth is that, it's interesting that with the virtual training and stuff that we're doing, is that it's probably a great idea to actually open up our training to other agents that maybe aren't with us, that should be, or that could be, right? And make that available. Did you catch that one, Das? No?
Oh, yeah.
So I think that we should look at a campaign to open up that training and this everyday thing that we're doing in that virtual learning to the industry, to let them be involved. And at the very least, it makes us a safer industry. It makes us a leader. And when people are looking at a change, then that's the place to be. So,
I think, Paul, just to interrupt you for a second, I find it interesting because I had a couple of our realtors compliment me on how quickly we jumped in and started doing so much stuff online, right? Virtually and Zoom meetings and all of that stuff. And in speaking to some other realtors, they were working at brokerages where the broker has taken the approach of, yeah, when this is all done, we'll go back to normal, right? So they've done nothing to incorporate any changes, right? And the other example that I like to use is, I said, anybody who is not doing electronic signature, for instance, prior to this, right? And that should have been a small number to begin with. But I joked, I said, after this, if you attempt to hand somebody a pen to sign a contract, they'll probably get you arrested. They'll say, "Are you crazy? I'm going to touch your pen?" So hey, it's in a way it's somewhat forced, the technology, but definitely what everybody should be doing anyways, right? So it's just a must.
Yeah. Well, emergency bill 1 is that it's currently a $5,000 fine to hand somebody a pen. It's currently a $5,000 fine to be within, the 6 feet of somebody. So things have changed. What I want to do right now is that we are a real estate and wine podcast, and
Yes.
even though we are all at, I guess, Tass and I are at our home, Anthony is in the office. We are all in our respective own space. We all were shipped via Purelator a bottle of wine from my cellar, and I'm going to show my wine. Now, when I speak, it doesn't seem to put me on the big screen. Are you guys seeing that yourself?
Yeah,
Well?
yeah, no, that's perfect.
Yeah, you can see that?
Yeah. Yeah.
So I am trying a 2010 Brunello di Montalcino. This particular wine is highly rated. It is a Sangiovese grape. And I only have one wine to try because we each have our own respective bottle to try. But mine is extremely smooth, extremely good on the nose. It has a velvety texture to the mouth feel as you caress it in your mouth, and just an excellent wine. I would ask each of you to tell us what wine you have and show us your wine.
So did you say yours was a 2010, Paul?
I did.
Oh, okay. So mine is also Brunello di Montalcino.
Yeah.
The 2010. I don't know if this is a different.
It's a different one, yes.
There we go.
You will.
I do that.
Yeah, there you go.
I have
Perfect.
a black screen, so
You will find that we each
go.
have a Brunello di Montalcino, all from 2010.
Okay.
But all different wines. So
Different makers, Paul. So the same regions, different companies.
Yep.
Or different winemakers. Yeah.
Yep. So what do you think of yours, Tass?
Very exactly what you said. Now, what's interesting is maybe because I didn't have anything anything to eat with this. When I first took a sip of it, I thought, almost a little bit harsh. But I think that was, it's early in the day. I haven't had dinner, and then the more I drink it, the word velvety comes to mind. I think that's the best way to describe it. And I would say fruity. The nose is nice, fruity, and it's excellent. I'll enjoy the rest of it with my dinner.
Perfect. You share some with your wife, I hope.
Yes, for sure.
Mr. Bongero, you're going to drink before you leave the office, or?
Well, I'm going to sip it, and I will bring it home for sure. Well, I don't know if you can see it, but it is a Brunello di Ticino in 2010.
Hey, amazing.
What a
it's
coincidence.
just lovely. It sounds very Italian to me. I don't know.
I agree. Yeah.
Let's just take a little
Give us
taste here.
Give us your view on that, Anthony. I know that you always have a lot of the good adjectives to describe the wines.
How come I'm lost for words? I will tell you, this is not a wine for wimps.
No,
It's got a lot of flavor, a lot of depth. It's not weak. It is strong. You do taste fruits on your tongue, but again, it's on the strong side of the equation.
Yeah.
Very good.
I agree, Anthony. Mine is very similar.
Very good. So all those three wines are all rated 95 out of 100.
Oh, wow.
Excellent.
Give you the overall rating of the 2010 vintage. So no coincidence. So the overall rating of the 2010 vintage for Brunello di Montalcino is 98. So you guys are,
wow.
Yeah, so it is just a spectacular year, and I thought it would be nice to each try the same year and the same wine. I was going to do it where I let you guys talk first, and then I gave it all away anyway, but that's okay. So, we got to keep up our tradition, and this is not Tass and Anthony didn't just pull that out of their basement. That was all sent to them, and cheers, guys.
Cheers, guys. Cheers.
Wine.
Thank you for the wine, Paul.
I love it. Yeah, absolutely.
I think we're, again, I don't think we have the right terminology, Anthony and myself, sometimes, but I think we're getting there, Anthony. I think we're getting closer. We just don't know how to describe it in wine terms. It's strong, right? But I think Paul gets it when we're describing it to him.
I think that what happens sometimes as well is that when you go somewhere and you get served a wine that's not like these wines, that's when you really see the difference. And you think, okay, yeah, I'm a wine snob, so I'm trying to create snobs out of the two of you. I am already a snob, but so it's a good thing that I am self-isolated. I came back from Florida. I've been self-isolated without going anywhere for 2 weeks. Today was my first day out. Shocked to see gas so inexpensive, but also a little bit of a challenge in that my wife and I are drinking way more wine than we used to. It's self-isolation. So I think that if times do get tough, though, I will start a wine sales from my basement.
There you go.
So I do have that as my backup plan if we need to inject some cash. So I want to move from the wine to just talk a little bit about the Treb numbers for March. So I'm just going to look to my right, guys. I'm looking at them on a screen. I didn't put them on a paper because I don't have a printer, but I'm looking at them on the other screen. So just give you the numbers for March. And it's interesting that Treb broke down March into the first 15 days and then the second 15 days to show you that the difference there. And when you look at the annualized numbers based on what we did to March 15th, Treb's forecast was 100 or 90,000 transactions, but if you look at annualizing where we were for the first 2.5 months of 2020, we were on pace to do over 100,000 transactions. So that's how hot the market was. Yep. And when we look at it, so the first 2 weeks of March, there were 4,643 transactions done, which is 58% of the total. And in the second 2 weeks, there was 3,369 transactions done. So the first half was an increase. The second half was 15.9% down from last year. So clearly the changes and the drastic changes in the government announcements to the changes to the market, did make a significant difference. And just to be clear with agents that aren't clear, the boards, CREA or RIA, were strongly suggesting that people not do open houses. And Century 21 Leading Edge made a decision, I think on the 23rd of March, that we banned open houses as a Century 21 Leading Edge agent. And then, I guess, a little over a week ago, the Ontario government banned open houses. So we need to be responsible in how we're doing things, and when people aren't, then governments step in. And as I was talking earlier, the social distancing is people were not taking it seriously, and there is actually a $5,000 up to a $5,000 fine if you are caught. And I have seen police talking to people, and obviously if you're in the same family from the same household, you don't get the ticket. But we were out, with the dog, and we were asked by police if we were together. So it is a serious situation. So the other thing that's interesting is the average selling price reported between March 15th and March 31st was $862, which is down from the first half of the month, but still up by 10.5% compared to the same time period last year. So when we look at the market, we obviously have two things that we're looking at. We're looking at number of transactions, and then we're looking at values. And, agents have asked me, what do I think of values? And it is very interesting that values, for the most part, even when we are in this challenging situation, could go up before they go down, or they could maybe not go down. So it is really hard to say what's going to happen with the values. And why I say this is that there is all this pent-up demand. We were in a situation where there was multiple offers on every listing. So people that haven't lost their job are looking at this as, I can still get into the market.
Yeah.
And they're going to be out there. And they are still competing, for properties.
Yeah.
And the challenge in our marketplace is that if we had 8 buyers for every listing, and we have all of these changes to the marketplace, and we only have 2 or 3 or 1, it probably doesn't mean a huge change in the market. So because we were in such a hot market, it is uncertain as to whether we will see a significant adjustment in prices, right? So that will be, time will tell, but those are the reasons why there may not be. And in fact, there may be an increase in prices before there is any decrease. And, agents are asking me to forecast this. Obviously, I can't. I know Anthony can, right? But the bottom line is, what I say to agents is, really, when you're talking to clients, all you can tell them is what it is today, right? And what it is today, if you're going to transact safely, here's what the market value is today. Here's what's happening today. So that's what you've got to go with, and then you need to then look at it. It's anybody's guess in terms of what it does in the future. What do you think about, all the things that are happening, Anthony, in terms of where values will go? What are your feelings there?
Yeah, just very quickly, my device says there's about 12% life left, and I'm sure it'll last. But if it doesn't, then I'll just log back in on my PC. So forgive me if that ever does happen. But I think
you don't have a power cord?
I forgot my power cord. Okay, leave it at that. You made me say it. So nonetheless, we'll be more prepared for that next time. Silly. Don't laugh too hard, Tass. No, I don't see the prices dropping. I see it leveling off because it's just common sense that when times are tight, you don't see the great big huge continual price increases. Having said that, it's too early to tell, what may happen by the end of the year. You could say a 2% increase, a 3% increase. But I think the worst case scenario is you won't see a huge jump in prices. I'm hoping best case scenario is that the sales pick up. That's what the hopeful thing is. So I don't foresee prices dropping.
Okay, very good. How about you, Tass? What do you think of values? What's your?
Yeah, I don't know. I think I'm on the fence on that. I think that there's very good reasons for them to not drop, like exactly what you said, Paul. I think that the demand was just super high. Don't know how that's going to get counterweighed with lack of public confidence or lack of jobs coming out of this, right? But I think that for a lot of people coming out of this, they will be able to now all of a sudden maybe not have to go into multiple offers, and they'll be able to get a house where they couldn't have 6 months ago, right? I think it'll come down to who's got the job stability, right? So if we come out of this, whether it's 3 months or 6 months, whatever it is, so if you have two people that work as, call them teachers, right? And they're saying, oh, well, our jobs are guaranteed. 6 months ago, we couldn't have bought a house because everything was multiple offers. They were 100,000 over asking. Now all of a sudden we can, right? So I've always believed from a realtor standpoint, so on your question of price, I think that they will stabilize. I think that we're not going to see that increase that we were headed towards at the beginning of the year. So I think that at the end of the year, in comparison to last year, we might be at the same price. I think we could be slightly lower, but I don't think that there's going to be a drastic change in that, right? And I think from a realtor standpoint, my answer is always, how's the market? Fantastic. Because the question is, are you a buyer or are you a seller, right? So the market is always fantastic for somebody, right? And from a realtor standpoint, if it's fantastic for buyers, then guess what? Go get a bunch of buyers. And if it's fantastic for sellers, then guess what? Go work on getting a bunch of listings, right? So it's pretty simple, right?
Very good.
And when's a good time to buy?
Always.
What's the answer? Now's a good time.
Always.
Yeah. So the other thing that is interesting is that obviously there is a lot of people that are hard hit with this pandemic, that have lost their job, and that will have an effect on the market as well.
Yep.
So obviously, intervention where you're allowed to postpone or delay your mortgage payments. What you're doing, though, is you're adding that onto your mortgage. You still owe that money. The bank's not saying, no, don't worry about it. Don't pay us. They're just adding it on to your mortgage. So nobody's giving you that money. So I think that the time frame for the economy to rev back up will have an effect on that. If we can get people back to work quickly, I think that we won't see a drop in prices. But if it takes more time to get people back, I think that we'll have a number of people that are in a position where they're going to sell and rent, they're going to sell and move down, so that there's going to be more sellers out there, which we were in short supply of. So that's a good thing. But if there's enough people that are sellers, then that could see a softening. And I think that I'm more with Anthony, where I think that maybe a level, sort of leveling, not seeing the increases that we were anticipating. To be honest with you, we were almost getting back into helter-skelter mode, like we were in 2017.
Definitely.
And so this may be something that helps to balance the market, right?
Yeah.
Because, and that's the other thing, is that we are not in some of the other provinces in Canada where they had a poor market or a soft market or a buyer's market before this happened, and now it's going to be bad. And that's true in Alberta, in certainly other places, but in the Golden Horseshoe we have an undersupply. We've always had an undersupply, so that's still a challenge. So let's talk a little bit about some other things away from pandemic and that kind of stuff, and what else is happening in the industry. I know that really everything is all related to this, but what else is going on, Tass? What else is going on with you?
What else is going on? I think industry-wide and maybe right across the board, right? I think that a little bit of a shift in people's mentality, Paul, I think is happening, right? I think that people will come out of this a lot more appreciative of their lives, right? And I said to somebody the other day, I said, we were all kings and queens of our kingdoms and didn't even realize it, right? And it's so true, because now you look back and you think, what was I doing 2 months ago? And what were my complaints 2 months ago? They were nothing. Like now when you look back, you think, that was so silly. What was I upset about, or what was I complaining about? So I do think that people will be a hell of a lot more appreciative of their everyday life. I know I will be, because my everyday life I think is fantastic. I enjoy just going out for a coffee with my wife. I enjoy going to work. All of these things that I think so many of us take for granted. I think that they will be a lot more appreciative of them, and I think that hopefully everybody is taking this time to invest in themselves a little bit, whether it's education, whether it's contemplating their life, whatever. But I think that you have this time, so why not utilize it to better yourself, or exercise, right? There's a lot of things that you can be doing at this time. So I do think, I know this is not pandemic, you said non-pandemic related, but I do think that we will have a bit of a shift in mentality of the public. And I think the other part of that is, I think a big realization for a lot of people that they were not ready financially. I think that's probably the number one lesson here, is that most people, I think, are stepping back thinking, I shouldn't have bought X, Y, and Z because I wasn't prepared for this. I don't have, 3 months of income put aside, or whatever, the case is. And I know, I think 3 months is what everybody recommends. And I think the average is probably 1 month. So I think people's mindset will change with that, right? And I think that that's all good. So.
No, I agree. I think that we really need to, be compassionate in these times,
Yeah.
and look at and reflect on, what we need to be thankful for. There's no doubt about that. I think that it's very interesting. I think it's also interesting that being all at home, there's lots of challenges with being at home as well.
Oh my God!
Right? So that's certainly interesting. Did you have something you wanted to say?
Oh, I had a good kick with that one, Paul, because as you know, so I have 4 kids, and they're all back home now, even the ones that were away for school. So, and the father-in-law that lives with me. So there are 7 people living in our house, and all of a sudden our house feels very small. And my one son has moved his music stuff into the shed in the backyard because he was so desperate to have private time, right, that he's moved into the shed. So yeah, I think that's pretty interesting, right?
So. The new slogan is in the real estate industry is, can you see yourself self-isolating in this house?
In this house, yeah.
Right? This needs to be the new slogan, and not to poke fun at it, but it is interesting. We are getting to know our homes better. So and the maybe the deficiencies and why we need to make a move. How about you, Anthony? What are you seeing other than this stuff going on in the industry?
But Paul, it's all the yin and the yang. It's all connected. So I think Tass had a very good way of portraying it. But darn, power is down. If you can still hear me.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay. So basically, I think it's a reassessment period. Everyone is reassessing their life. I think a lot of people got way out of hand, almost non-appreciative, non-thankful, non-grateful, gluttonous, not prepared financially. The list is endless. And I think it's pitiful that, that this happened. It's the most horrible thing, but it makes you reassess that, wait a minute, I've got a great home, or maybe there are shortfalls. Maybe I will fix up the back room, enjoy my backyard. So I think it will bring people more to reality. That's just my feeling. It's going to be quite a shift.
Yeah, I like Tass the way Anthony doesn't pull any punches, right? He lets it out, right?
Gluttonous. I don't know where you pulled that one out of, but gluttonous is good. That's a good one.
Everyone got greedy.
Yeah, yeah,
absolutely. So, Steve, if you're still with us, our Vendetta Media man. Do we have any questions that we can field from the agents out there or consumers out there?
We absolutely do. Let me flip my notebook because I've been taking lots of notes during this podcast, gentlemen. That was great. So we have a couple questions. Some of them are pretty, I think, as expected, pretty relevant to the COVID-19 crisis. And some of them you guys definitely address. So one of the ones that you addressed, you can let me know if you want to add to it at all, is just quite simply, how long do you think we'll be impacted for? And I think you guys talked about what kind of that immediate impact would be. But even going into what we might be looking at after June or after those times that we were that we were talking about, and what the transition into a more normalized market would be, I think might be interesting to talk about.
Okay, great. So Anthony, why don't you start us off on that one?
All right. Can you repeat the question?
Absolutely.
Question.
So let's go with your predictions for the market. Were things starting to normalize again in June?
Yeah, right.
What does it look like to you after that time period? Let's say in the fall and in the winter as well as the new year.
Yeah, I feel like I'm going to be repeating my thoughts if I didn't say it. Are you with me?
Yeah, we're still hearing you.
Okay, so basically, along what Paul said, there's no light switch. June, we're just saying we're hopeful. June, it could be July, could be September, could be the fall, but it's not a light switch that, okay, everything's back to normal. I think everything is different. Everything's changed. People's attitudes, the way of doing business, if we're talking real estate, is going to be using the technology. And like you said, not going with your sweaty hands, handing them a pen. So I see that is going to be a positive way of doing business. So it is a process. It's not like going to just be, oh, great, back to normal. I don't think you'll ever get back to normal. I think it's going to be the whole attitude. In terms of myself, I love people. I love partying. I love getting together. But if you ask me right now, I don't want to do any of that. I don't want to see people. And I don't mean that in an ignorant way. It's a way that you're nervous about, the way the situation is. Sure, it'll calm down, but I think people are going to think a lot differently in the future about how they interact, a little bit more social distancing. But in terms of business, it's all going to be about the new systems, the technology, and virtual real estate.
Very good. Tass, what are your summary on that?
Yeah, so market, obviously that's the giant question mark, Steve, and I don't think we know that. I think until the flow of people, let's put it that way, improves, I think that the prices will decrease. I don't think a lot, because I still don't think that there's a lot of product out there. But I think that short term, the prices could go down. And once there's more people active, I think the prices will rebound a bit, especially if the supply is still low, right? And I think we end up pretty steady on prices in comparison to last year by the end of this year. That's what I'm thinking.
Perfect. So just to reiterate my view on this, I think that we are going to be coming out of this or transitioning in June or July, where we start with 10% of the consumers starting to transact normally when we get into the summer. And I think that amount will rise to the end of the year to about 50%. So I'm saying that the majority until the end of the year will be transacting in a safer virtual environment.
Yeah.
And that the agents that adapt to that will be the ones that are doing the business. And then once we get into 2021, then we will be over that curve where the majority will starting to be transacting. So over 50% will be transacting in a normal fashion. And I think that will then play out into, the first 6 months of 2021, where by June of 2021 is when we will have 100%, and probably never 100%. There will still be the cautious people that will still have 10% of the market that will be transacting that way, that will be concerned. So that's how I see the business coming back. And I think that we will see a level pricing, and we will see people that are back into the market that couldn't get into the market. So I think that will keep the prices level. I don't think that we'll see a huge drop, if any. And if we do, it will certainly come back. So that's my view on that. So any other questions that we have, Steve, from people?
Absolutely. What else do we have here? So had one person write in just basically asking the steps that you are taking as a brokerage for the agents, and just kind of getting a glimpse into what you guys are doing to prepare, or what you guys are doing in order to react to everything that's going on right now.
Cass, you want to take that one?
Yeah, no, for sure. So I think that with that, Steve, I think we've really jumped in strong. So we do currently right now, we have Zoom webinars going on every day, Monday to Friday, usually an hour long, on all kinds of topics. Today's was on utilizing BombBomb videos to stay in touch with people. I was on another one a couple of days ago that Don had done on Zoom, how to use Zoom and Google Hangouts to have meetings. So really pushing hard on all of the technology that agents have to adopt during this period, right? So we've been doing that every day at 10 o'clock. On top of that, Century 21 Canada, I think, has done a great job of assembling a whole bunch of different speakers, including Rich Robbins, Kathleen Black, to mention a couple of them. And they do a live Facebook presentation every day, I think at 1:00. Again, they're more on the motivation stuff, and I've jumped in on some of those, and the one I watched with Kathleen the other day was excellent. Just, she's kind of saying the exact same thing that we've been saying here, that you can't sit and wait for the business to change or go back or whatever. This is the reality. You have to adjust to this reality and start dealing with it. So she was great. So Century 21's been doing that. And we've just, at the office, we've taken a lot of processes where we've done so to protect our staff, to keep our staff safe. I think the biggest part of all of this is providing information, right? So I do a video every day that I blast out to the agents. Again, it's usually just a 5-minute update of, hey, because things were moving so quickly, it was like literally every day something new was happening, right? We were providing agents with information on the Canadian Emergency Response Benefit. So agents have a lot of questions. So I think that a big part of our role has been to provide as much information as we can to them that's concise and pertinent to them as realtors. So we've been, I think, very busy doing that. And also on technology, we were already in the midst of switching over to Transaction Desk. So we've been doing webinars every week on that. And timing wise, this is just, it's a no-brainer, right? We were already doing that, but that we've beefed that up because we believe that that's a strong, we have to take a strong position on that as well, right? So, I think that's what we've been doing.
Very good. Thanks, Tass. So I think the other thing, just to add to that, is that, it's interesting that in this environment, I believe that there will be a number of brokerages that don't come out of this.
Yeah.
Right?
I agree.
And that is just the reality of it. And when we look at whether people are, running on thin margins and just cannot absorb, these type of challenges. And I think it's interesting because so many people immediately look to, what are you going to do for me to help me? And really, for the most part, that is somewhat insignificant to the reality of the importance of shoring up resources, making sure that you're a company that is a viable company and can protect commissions, can protect deposits. And I think that there is some concerns there. And I have raised those concerns in the other venues that I participate in, because I'm very much concerned with those. And I think that realtors should be looking at solid companies to be a part of. And I think that that's an important thing to look at here. And we are going to continue to demonstrate that we are a solid company that has staying power and to be a good choice for security. That I think is an important factor. Yeah. I think that we have lost Anthony, possibly, on this with his battery running out.
Maybe we weren't as secure as we thought.
That's right. But we can continue with the two of us and you, Steve, with if there is any other questions.
Well, I actually want to add one in there. I know you guys are coming out with all that content. Where can people find that? I know I'm sure it'll be emailed out in real time, but is there kind of a aggregated source of everything?
So which content, Steve, are you referring to?
Just all the Zoom meetings and things like that. The YouTube channel.
So, the Zoom meetings, I believe that Don emails recordings of those out to the whole company, right? I'm assuming they're also saved in Google Docs. Google Drive. I'm not positive on that. I know that Century 21 saves the webinars that they do on Facebook. I believe those are recorded and then also saved on Google Drive. Okay.
Excellent.
So I'll just add to that, Steve, is that clearly we have time out. I need to do an update for my daughter here working from home. What do we need?
It looks like Anthony is connecting with audio. Anthony, can you hear us?
There you go. Anthony, can you hear us? It's okay. We'll finish up. We're almost ready to call it a day. What we do is we have on Google Drive, we have a calendar of events that has been sent out again today to all agents, and they can mirror that on their Google Calendar, click on Century 21 Leading Edge, and it will show all of the events and all of the different scheduled things that are happening throughout the month. So that is available to people. We've also, when you look at the Century 21 Canada stuff that they're putting out at 1 o'clock each day, I had a challenge finding it, I guess, because if you go in early, it's not there yet. So it turned out that they have that on a YouTube channel. And
you're right. It's YouTube. I said Google. Yeah, it's on YouTube.
It is on Facebook. It's Facebook Live that they shoot it, but then they also put it on YouTube.
Yeah.
So I've asked Don to set up a YouTube channel so that we can put all of the stuff that we're taping also on our YouTube channel. So we will continue to send that out to our agents. And as I said earlier in the broadcast, Steve, is that we're going to also look at how can we make that available to other agents. And maybe obviously with a closed YouTube channel, we can maybe by invitation only or look at ways to provide that information. You know, it's not secrets. The truth is that when you put out information, it's very few of the agents that will embrace it anyway, and we want to help the industry. So we will put that out to people. So unless there's any other pressing questions, Steve, I think that we will call this a day. Is there anything else pressing, or are we?
All the rest of them have been have been covered. They'd really just be redundancies anyways. So thank you, gentlemen. I know I found that very informative.
Appreciate that, Steve. Thank you very much, and thank you to Vendetta Media for stepping in and creating our new at-home format for our podcast. And hopefully they make it look as amazing as they always do. And thank you very much, Paul Barron, Century 21 Leading Edge, broker of record. And we've got just Tassin with me. We lost Anthony on the power cord scenario. So let's sign off, Tass. And
I'll sign off for Anthony. Thank you very much for joining us. And on behalf of myself, I'm Tassin Giannakakis. Cheers, everybody. Stay at home, be safe, and thank you very much for joining us. Oh, there's Anthony. There we go.
Cheers, Anthony.
Cheers, guys.
Take care, guys.
Bye-bye.
Bye.